Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the Douglas School Committee to order on November 15th at 7:01 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to read the Douglas Mission Statement for Douglas Public Schools. The Douglas Public Schools offer a diverse learning experience that meet the academic, social, physical, and emotional needs of all of our students. We provide a safe, supportive, and challenging learning environment in which students may achieve academic success and personal growth. Decisions are made in the best interest of our students. I'd open the floor up now for public comment if anybody would like to come forward.
Sorry.
Yep, right there. Please state your name and address, please.
Danielle Hoffman, 1 Crescent Lane.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment, I know Beth had sent out an email, but I went through all the trouble to prepare it, so I figured I might as well show up, right? So, in regards to the special education 5th grade program, but kind of overall in general, I have lived in Douglas for 9 years and have 2 children in the public school system here. I would like to make comment on the special education program, particularly the 5th grade, but my guess is overall in general. I have 1 child in the special education program and 1 who is not. First, I would like to start off by saying there are many dedicated and lovely staff in the special education program in Douglas. I do believe that they want to do a good job. I am just not sure they have the resources or leadership to actually affect change for these students. We have had fantastic interactions when it has come to PT, OT, and speech. Where this program is lacking is in the basics, leadership and accountability. My biggest frustration as a parent is not knowing how to navigate the system. We have asked for 3 years in Douglas if they can handle my child's case. We have never gotten a straight answer. We have consulted his doctor, who is head of pediatric neurology at UMass, who has assured us his medical condition has nothing to do with his ability to read, that schools often use a medical condition as a means to fall back on their program not being a good program. When it comes to the IEP, it is a crutch. Our first year on the IEP, we were seemingly laughed at by staff when we had concerns that our child would be held back if he could not read at grade level by the end of the year. We were told that doesn't happen. So what does happen? Let me let you into a glimpse of what we live with on an IEP here in Douglas. We live with feeling like we have to be a burden to the department by requesting meetings in the beginning of the year to not waste precious months if the actual scheduled meeting is later in the year. Ours is in January. We live with having to wait half a year for the new instructor each year to get to know our child, as opposed to reading our child's file or continuing with the same teachers year after year. We live with change only coming when we scream. We live with a department that couldn't even hire someone with a license. I mean, if that doesn't tell you how inept this program is, I don't know what does. We live with a summer school program that is a joke. We live with getting an email that a department head has resigned and someone is taking over, only to find out in a Facebook group that B-Grid services aren't being offered during this time. Why wasn't this in the email? How is this acceptable? We live with vague goals in our IEPs, such as communication or reading comprehension. Never is there any mention in there of what that looks like. How do we quantify that? How do I know I'm there? When will we get there? I'll tell you why it's not there, because if it were there, these teachers would be held to these benchmarks. We live with knowing that we look to this department for guidance and help to get clear answers to pass and never achieve those goals. We live with having to know we may have to actually get an advocate, as many have done in this town, or worse, an education attorney, to try to get what our children need. We live with knowing our children are being failed. We moved to Douglas to immerse ourselves in small town life, to escape the atrocities of larger city public school system issues. But make no mistake, those problems are here and thriving in this department. I am not naive. I have very little hope in anything that I say tonight will make any difference to the school committee. My hope is that a parent in the audience, watching or through word of mouth, may hear this and say, enough is enough. hold these educators that we entrust with our children 6 hours a day to be held accountable, to stand with other parents instead of gossiping about it behind the scenes on Facebook, affect real change. I will not allow my child to be a statistic. We will not allow the IEP to be used as a crutch in our child's case. However, if this program continues in the manner it has been accustomed that we've experienced, I will be the biggest thorn in its side. I have to know that I have done everything that I can for my child. Please put the pressure on this department. Research, talk to parents. Please hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else for public comment? Seeing if there isn't anything else, we'll move on to topics of old business.
No old business?
And moving on to new business.
All right, well, I just got the latest. We're going to have Miss Sokol here to do a fall sports update, but she is at the boys soccer game.
Go Douglas.
30 seconds before we walked in, we were in double overtime. We just lost 1-0. So they're there. Mary will be back with the kids. It was a great season. They were both in boys, I think this was Final Four. Girls were Elite Eight, so they made it far in the tournament. But Mary will be here at the next meeting with kids just to give an update on fall sports and give a little introduction to winter sports. So they'll do that. Mrs. Bennett was going to be here to talk about the dance guidelines with some students. She's also at the game. Some of the kids had to work. I think one of them's at the game. But in your package, you do have a copy of the dance guidelines, a copy of the old and the new for you to look at. Just to refresh people's memory, Mrs. Bennett met with a group of kids and Mr. Vega to go over the guidelines. You can look, the old one had 11 bullets, this has 9 bullets. It's a lot shorter, it's a lot more condensed. It approaches things from a more, I think, is it not in there? Okay. I thought it was emailed out. I'm gonna pass it down. It was presented in a more proactive way for students to look at. So we pushed it out. We had to make a couple of little tweaks during the dance. I was actually coming back from my son's last parents' weekend in college, and my wife and I stopped by at the dance, stayed for a little bit, had about 20, 30 kids here when I was here. Things appeared good, kids were laughing, kids were having fun. More kids came later on in the evening, but the second dance happened without incident. But you have in front of you a copy of the guidelines. And
This is the updated one.
that's the old one.
This is the old
The
one.
new one's the shorter version.
So, we had, it says number 7 students will not be allowed to leave the dance until 1 hour prior to the ending time.
Change that.
Okay, because that's not on this.
It's not on that one?
No.
So maybe it was the wrong, maybe I got forwarded the wrong Google Doc.
Yeah, can you maybe?
Because in the,
Because I know when I saw it come out as a high school parent, I did see it said,
was it number 7?
yeah, that you have to get permission of a faculty member and the parent, so that the faculty member knows.
The big one says.
I'll make sure that
students
they're
will not be
using the
allowed to enter
correct
the dance
version.
After the first hour unless prior permission has been granted.
Right.
That's in the longer
Right.
version.
But they will not be able to leave the dance before the start of the last hour without parent permission.
But the longer
They can't
version
return.
is not
This is the
being
newer
used
one?
anymore,
This might be
so.
the newer one?
Excuse me?
The longer version is not being used anymore, correct?
Correct, so we went to the shorter version.
So the longer one has it, but the shorter one doesn't.
So,
But it's somewhere that the kids are allowed to leave if they
yeah,
have parent permission.
probably the best thing to do is I'll push it off to the next meeting until Miss Bennett
Yeah.
can come here and explain it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, great, thank you. Okay.
And the third time will be a charm presenting this. All right. One of the things I've asked Dr. Merrick to do is to present her vision, her guidance for the department going forward. She's been here roughly 100 days. This is a look forward as to where we're going, some of her goals for the year. It's also a look ahead at what she's observed in her first 100 days here, and there's a brief part of it where we're going to do an MCAS analysis. Before we dive into the MCAS analysis, just want to remind people that this is a public forum, And MCAS is, especially for students with disabilities, is a very private, personal conversation. And we need to be careful when we have a dialogue about it. Because we're so small, you could very quickly break confidentiality and identify students when you start asking too many pressing questions. I don't want to not ask questions, but just if Dr. Merrick seems to be dancing around, answering some of the questions, we just don't want to, in a public forum, break confidentiality and talk about students' individual disabilities. And we also don't want parents who are watching saying, hey, they're talking about my kid on camera. Just don't want that to happen. So I'll call Dr. Merrick up, and I'll come and get the clicker, because I think I'm responsible for, my job is the clicker.
Turn it on? Okay.
No
Oh,
clicker
you're
for
clicking
you.
for me. Oh,
I'll click for
wonderful.
you.
Oh,
That's my job.
great. All right, well, you definitely see the early child educator in me, former kindergarten teacher, always a kindergarten teacher at heart, and early childhood principal, because I love the young children photos and whatnot, so it comes to light here. So just a little bit of data for you as I roll out our entry plan, as my team has been here since September, 3 months. So just to give you a little bit of information about what we've been doing. So the directors and the coordinators have conducted about 59 meetings between the elementary and primary school thus far since the beginning of the school year. We've done about 36 meetings at the middle and high school, and I've done about 15 meetings out of district and for the Department of Children and Families, of which we have a couple of students that are in that situation. We have received about, just a minute, we've received referrals for about 10 students from early intervention. And what we are seeing is a little bit of a pattern here in parents, as we come out of COVID, being a little anxious about how their young child is doing. And so a lot of this is just helping them to feel okay about next steps and where their student is going. And you can see the results of our meetings, that we've had 6 meetings thus far, and 3 have been ineligible, and 1 eligible. So, and that's unusual. That's a high referral number for EI for this little district. So we just are seeing some anxiety with our parents who have little ones, which is completely justified in this environment. And then initial meetings, I had about 52 meetings with staff, parents, administrators, principals, CPAC, stakeholders, to just talk about the district in general and what we can do better and what we need to improve on and what we're doing well. All right, Paul, thank you.
So the coordinators are averaging like 1 to 2 meetings a day for IEPs?
Yes, right now, yes. That will taper down. It already is starting to settle down, but we had a lot of catching up to do in the beginning. Feel like we're there.
Report card just went out, so.
Well, right.
if you
I think 1 IEP meeting a day is,
Yeah.
I would expect them to be doing. Not that they're not doing what, I'm just saying, I would expect them to have 3 or 4 a day, so that's pretty good.
So here are some of our numbers, just your curiosity. And then you can see our total numbers of students across the top, and then the total number of students with IEPs, that's active IEPs, not that are in the queue for an initial or expecting, other evaluations or whatnot. And so we have 274, 47 at the primary, 76 at the elementary, 77 middle, 75 high school. You can see a nice pattern between elementary, middle, and high school, which we expect. We're running at about between 26 and 25%, which is very high.
State average is what,
but,
18,
also
19?
typical of other districts in the Commonwealth. We usually run about 17%, so that's very high for this time period. Number of 504s, number of 504s is also a little bit high. What we are seeing is that we have a lot of students that are on both a 504 and an IEP. There's been a lot of legal advisories over the years that go either way on that, especially around students who have health issues as to whether you have a health plan or a 504. I'm leaning in the direction of releasing them from the 504 and just having a health plan for moving forward. We can call it what you like at an IUPT meeting. We could do a 504 IUP meeting all in one. But that's taking up a lot of time for our SACs, our school adjustment counselors, because they're the one that they conduct those meetings, and would like to bring that number down just a little bit. Ls, we have been at that number for quite some time, around 12 to 15 students. And then our DCF involvement. We have about, a handful of cases that we.
Bless you.
This is our staffing. We have 24 special education teachers across the district. I do think that that's plenty. It's a robust staff. We have 46 paraprofessionals that's just in special education, so ABAs or paras that are assigned to special education classrooms or students.
So is there a special education teacher per grade?
Yes,
Okay.
almost.
With the exception
Because-
of
Yeah.
the primary.
Okay.
It says we have 5 in the primary.
So I'm including the integrated preschool. So three of those are two of those are the preschool, and then 3 would be the flex program and the, 3 of the preschool, and 1 is flex and 1 is.
The flex is
A1.
up here, right?
But
It's
we-
at the elementary, or did we add another one?
Well, we have a teacher spot there.
Oh, we just don't have a body.
Don't have
to-
a body. no.
Okay.
Yeah. Right?
Okay, so this 24 special education, that's not all full, we don't have all 24?
Do we have a breakout of where the vacancies are?
I don't have a vacancy slide for you, but I can tell you what they are. We have 3 ABA positions, 1 at each school, or at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school. And we have a 5th grade teacher position open, special ed teacher as of recently, and we have a 8th grade special ed teacher position recently.
And we technically have this flex one in the
Correct.
primary, but those kids are being serviced in the
Correct.
elementary school.
Correct.
Got it, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then provider service, so speech and language, we actually, they're consultants through FREC, French River. They're excellent, they've been with us a long time, they're super. Occupational therapy, we have 2, 1 is half-time. And we have a physical therapist, that's 0.6. And we have 2 full-time psychologists, one 1 to 5, one 6 to 12. And then school adjustment counselors, we have 5. Oh, and you know who I did not include there? And my regrets, I'll put that up there as in a very important piece to us, is our BCBA. And we have 1. And she handles the whole district. Very key player. So I have done a very surface overview of MCAS. And after our meetings from last time with the principals, I do view it as a building-based report out. In other words, the building-based principals are responsible for all of their students within the building, and that includes special education. So when you separate them out and isolate them in a particular way, I find that it's not in the best interest of kids with disabilities. So tonight, I'm going to present to you just the surface information around a comparison from 2019 compared to now as to student growth percentiles and composite scores. But the other part, I think that the principals really gave you a nice analysis of where special ed is in this moment, and any other questions that you have related to that in particular, I would recommend that you reach out to them, because they should understand their entire population, and that includes kids with disabilities. Really helps with moving forward with gen ed and special ed working together for outcomes, and so I really strongly encourage that. The thing to keep in mind too when we're thinking about special education and outcomes is There's a reason why students receive their educational services from an IEP, an individualized educational program. It's because they are having trouble accessing the curriculum, and they need specialized instruction in order to do that. And when you have your specialized instruction modified to meet your needs, sometimes it is different than these standards. They're the same standards, but they are done differently and in a different way. And so the assessment tools and the outcomes can look different. And we need to understand that. So the best way to look at students, especially students with disabilities, is how are they growing? How are they improving? And I'm actually going to show you some of the steps that we're taking to improve those outcomes for students with disabilities moving forward, and some tools that we'll be using to, dipsticks that we'll be using to measure that. Okay? So when it comes to MCAS, ELA and math composite scores, you'll see here at the elementary school, if you look at the bottom, there hasn't been a really steep decrease in their achievement scores. Matter of fact, it's fairly insignificant. And if you look at it in math as well, it's even less significant. So we've been holding true right through COVID. I mean, that's 2019 compared to 2022, and there isn't a lot of difference. If you look up compared to all students, there's quite a bit of difference. But as far as our special education population within itself, there hasn't been a lot of change at our elementary school. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a similar pattern with our growth scores. Just a little, a little bit of change in the right direction, but nothing noteworthy. We've been holding the same pattern throughout time. So we didn't see a lot of blips at the elementary school from the COVID time. If we move on to the middle school, we did see some action here. We do see some differences, definitely at the middle school and the composite scores, if you look at the bottom. There definitely was a difference through COVID. And if you go to the next slide, which is growth percentiles, you'll see a very a similar pattern as well. A little dip in decline. We expect that in middle school too. Middle school, I'm sure thinking back on your own middle school years can be a very difficult time. And it's a very trying time for kids in special education. So I'm certainly not surprised to see it. And we certainly expect to be on a forward trajectory moving forward. So a great question that I got earlier is how come we didn't report out on the high school? And the reason that we don't report in the high school for this particular criteria is we don't have enough students. Our numbers are not high enough for 10th grade. Very small population of 10th graders that took the exam, and so they don't report that. But I did find chronic absenteeism to be interesting at the high school. If you look in 2019, it was much higher than it is now, which I don't have an explanation for that, but I find it very interesting. Something to kind of consider and look at moving forward.
Kind of different across the Commonwealth too, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Interesting. But the same for all students, too. We're consistent there.
They want to be back with
They
their
wanna be
peers.
here.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to be here, yeah. So these are just some of our goals for looking forward. So our first one is, obviously, I know that we've been taking some backlash around IEP processes and timelines and meeting invitations and all of that. And so we are certainly doing a deep dive administrative review to first of all try and catch up as we came out of a difficult time for our prior administration. I think they did a remarkable job given their circumstances, but they had some difficulties. And so we're there, but we're certainly taking bigger strides now to make sure that everything is consistent and that we are meeting all of our timelines and our continuous moving forward. So the next thing is, this is a big one. What I have noticed in my administrative review of students, and I've done a kind of a administrative review of all of our records, is that we have students who are struggling in reading and math. And so the two red balls that you'll see here, the first one that's a little higher on the scale there on the 85, that's a student's, that's where many of our students are cognitively, so intellectually, or their IQ is in the 85 range. And what we're seeing is that the other red ball, which is representing achievement or academics, is lower, especially in reading. And we don't want to see that. We want to see that ball move towards the right. You see the arrow moving towards the number 100, because you want to be more in the middle. You want them to be average. We want to see achievement scores go in the other direction. So in other words, we want to see a student that has an 85 cognitive score and a 100 achievement score. That's the direction that we want to be going in. And so how do we get there? Well, we have a cadre of students that would be a great fit for multisensory reading services for more than 60 minutes out of their day out of the classroom, so C-grid services that perhaps need a more language-based environment in order to be successful. And so we are certainly entertaining for moving forward to improve reading and math outcomes, especially at our elementary school and our middle school, to at least considering bringing back a language-based type environment. And this environment would really be a sub-separate, if you will, classroom for students who need reading instruction across their school day in both the areas of reading and writing and language, but also in math. And then for social studies and science, they would go back into the inclusion environment, because we want kids to be in general education as much as they possibly can. And they would be in lunch and their specials with their typical peers. So we have to come up with a schedule that works so that those students are able to do that, and that we create an environment that allows them to move that arrow in a different direction.
So currently, are students being scheduled for their pull-out services during their EL? And I know it's individualized, but with the goal, like, if a child has, a reading disability and they're needing, like, Orton Gillingham, but cognitively they can meet the curriculum, when are we pulling them from that? Are we pulling them from that during English? When they're missing their curriculum, or are we pulling them from something else?
So we try to the maximum extent to pull them. If you break your, right now we typically, this is just typically, we pull them for 30 minutes. For this particular population that I'm referencing now, I think it needs to be more than that. But when we pull them from the 30 minutes, if you have a 90-minute reading block, we try to pull them from the last 30 minutes of that reading, because that's the best time to pull them. We happen to use McGraw-Hill, so it's called your win block, if you will, and that's when we
So
try
we
to pull
do
them.
have a win block?
We do.
then? In all buildings?
No,
So just in elementary?
no, just in some grades.
Just
Some
in
grades do it a little bit differently.
Would we be looking to maybe make?
Yes,
I-
that's a great question, Beth, and yes, absolutely, that it needs to be a little more consistent. And not only consistent for our students, but consistent for these scheduling issues, right? Because it makes it so much easier if the schedule is the same and that we're all doing the same thing. And that we offset each other so that, grade 4 can go to science and social studies
Right.
with their class, and grade 3 can go to science and social studies with their class. And so Mr. DeFonso and I will be looking at the schedule beginning in January to make sure that we can find a schedule that works it's conducive for our students.
Can we look at that in the primary as well, for grade
Yes,
1 as well?
absolutely.
Because I think if we start working earlier and we start kind of getting like some consistency there,
Yes.
I think it would be helpful that we wouldn't be where we are now.
That's correct,
For
yes.
some of the kids.
You got it, absolutely. And we all know that the best environment for students, whether they have a disability or not, is in general education. Because when you're pulled for 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there and 20 minutes here and 15 minutes here, you're not getting a consistent education. And we really need to have that consistency, especially for our most vulnerable population. So this is a huge goal, a really big goal. And it is definitely for the primary and for the elementary, and quite frankly, for our middle. Because this has transcended into our middle school as well. And,
We had it done before in middle school.
yeah,
And it was fabulous.
oh, good, okay.
It was,
That's what I'm like,
no, because I was questioned, like, in my mind, I remember that, and I remember that time being really great, because the kids that, maybe needed more. or
get the
maybe needed-
services, they're part of their classroom, they get the pull out, they come back in, and it's just they pick up and go, and
Right.
so.
Or the kids on the end of the spectrum where they need more challenges. They can get what they need too at that same time, and nobody's, I think it's hard if you're trying to get your child services, but they have to miss an elective, or they have to miss something. Obviously, the services are, extremely important, but their whole education is so important to them.
Yeah. And every schedule is not going to be perfect, but we're going to try our best to make this make more sense. And that, we really need to start working on that, as soon as the new year. Yeah.
I think this is a huge focus area that it's a blind spot that, because I just know from my kiddos, this was happening, so what happened?
Right. Because you could do so much with that time. Your children that need, that maybe are looking at AP classes going forward or something, that they want the extra push, then nobody's being singled out as needing extra help at that time. Everybody's getting whatever
Something.
whatever they need.
Yeah.
I think that's huge for all of our kids.
And I'm concerned with us looking at it, starting to look at it in January. I mean, I feel time is of the essence with every kid in the district. So that's a half a year gone by now of 2022, 2023 school year. So why is there are there plans like starting to be put in place now for this?
So, yes, and I'll tell you exactly related to this particular goal in particular, which I think is one of the more important goals that we need to address, is the training of staff. So we have staff that are fairly new to running classrooms of this nature, right? So we have a fairly new teacher at the elementary school, we have a new teacher at the middle school, and we have a new teacher at the primary school, who are all new to this environment, right? So they need to be trained on multisensory reading, and when I say training, it's not a 3-hour course. This is a certification that they will receive to do it the proper way. And that, our students really need that. And that is a year-long training, and they will finish in June. But they have to be ready to do that in these type of environments. And right now, the staff that we have are wonderful. They're trying the best that they can, but they do need something in order to move that arrow in the right direction. And quite honestly, we needed to provide that for them, and we're doing that. But that's step one. You got to do it.
Is there anything that they can do in the meantime that's incorporates some of that?
Yes. So yes, and those that are in the training program are already incorporating everything that they're learning as they go along. But the schedule isn't perfect, and that won't happen until September.
So a couple things with WIN, just to
Yes.
make sure we're all on the same page. Depending on how WIN's structured,
Yep.
it can or can't be counted as time on learning. So you have to make sure you structure it correctly to make sure it's counting as time on learning, because if you don't structure the right way, now you're not meeting time on learning. Second thing with WIN, especially at the elementary school, is if you create a WIN block of 20 minutes, you're subtracting 20 minutes from somewhere else. So if you look at a third grader, it's either coming out of ELA, which you can't, it's coming out of math, which you can't, it's coming out of specials, recess, or
science or social studies. So if you pull those 20 minutes away and create a win block, you have to take that from somewhere else. And we know we can't do it in math and social studies. You can't give them math and ELA. Recess is important for second,
No,
third,
they
fourth
need
grader. They need that. They need to eat. They love their specials. So now you're left with science and social studies to pull out of. Science is an MCAS tested subject in the 5th grade, so you remove that, you're impacting that. So it's not just as easy as plugging in a 20-minute win block, because when you plug in those 20 minutes, you have to take 20 minutes from somewhere else.
But could you take 5 and 5 and 5 and 5?
You could, but you could take 5, 5, and 5, and 5, correct. Or you could there are a lot of things people do with science and social studies, and,
We need science.
Yeah,
Biology teacher.
you know. And there's things you can do, where you can incorporate social studies through ELA. I mean, there are things you can do, but it's not a quick, hey, let's
No,
snag
it's-
5
it's a
minutes
next-
here,
it- this
create a
will be a
win block,
next year.
and push it in.
To figure out the schedule, but I
And
think,
you have to look to see if it meets time on learning.
correct, we
that's the
have to be
first piece.
collaborative
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this, but everything is important.
It is.
And what about, can some of this stuff be done if a class is situated in small group? Or ELA, if they're small groups? With a para?
The OG,
No, because
Or
you have
like
to be
another
certain.
Yeah, it would no
person.
longer be small
Yeah.
group.
The thing of it is it's very, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very, very structured, and there's levels, and you can't, just because children are in the same grade doesn't mean they're at the same level. So like, I may be on a level 72, and you may be on a level 57. We shouldn't work together. That's not working the program to efficiency. I did not use the right word, but
the message was delivered.
basically not using it to,
The potential or whatever.
no, it's gonna,
Maximize?
I can't remember the word.
Efficacy?
No, Nancy Dugan is gonna hate me for not remembering.
You'll think of it.
I'll think of it at 2:00 in the morning. You'll all hear from
Write
me.
it down. at
But
the bedside.
basic, fidelity. Fidelity.
Fidelity.
Yes.
I just want to refocus you too, that this is an entry plan, so some of these things are being worked out, and I fully expect that I'll come back in January and February and roll this out for you in a deeper way, but this is, just our initial thoughts, so.
And Dr. Merrick and I have had a lot of conversations about the kids need, reading's the foundation. Reading and writing's the foundation. And it's not in elementary school, it has to start at the primary. And it's a pre-K to 5 issue. We have to look at our entire program. We have to look at a phonics program. We have to make sure kids have the ability to decode words. If you can't read a word, if you don't know how to break it down, it's not there. We've had the conversation about the science of reading, which we could go into for a while to talk about that. Back 10, 15, 20 years ago, teachers weren't taught how to teach kids how to read. That's a relatively new concept in college. So this is a massive lift for teachers, just to reframe their thinking and how to teach kids how to read. But to go through that OG training and understand it.
It's huge.
It's a year to a year and, what, is it a full year?
Oh, yeah.
It's a full year commitment just to be trained to know how to do it. Then you can slowly implement it, but then it takes some time to master that craft. So it's a rollout.
And not all students benefit from OG either. Some students benefit from Wilson. It depends on where their deficits are. Some of the programs are stronger than in others.
And if you think of the pyramid, you think of the reverse pyramid, right? Some kids are just going to learn to read because, like Courtney and I, you give them a book, they're going to learn to read for the love of reading.
60%, we'll do that.
We'll do it. Then you have your middle, who just need a little bit of pushing, and then you have that 20% who need this systematic
Yep.
approach and to help them break down and decode.
Well, not on a special ed standpoint, but in terms of our current reading curriculums that we have for all students, do we feel that those are still effective? Do we feel we need to do, I know you had talked a little bit about doing some curriculum reviews.
So The program that.
And that's not like a 2-week thing.
It's
That's
not
a
a
very,
two-week thing.
I
So
know that
the-
that's a process.
The
but-
Wonders program that we have is a very, 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 very scripted program. And if you follow it, to use your word, to fidelity, step by step by step, it builds upon things and helps us. So the program that we have is good. We need to build up our decoding program. Wonders has a good program, but we need to strengthen our foundations. We need to move foundations a little further up in the elementary school. Where do we go, up to grade 3?
Yes.
3. You really need that foundations into like grade 5 or 6 for it, because you need to push that along, and you need to get more people OG certified to be able to go into classes and work with that 20% who need that help decoding.
We're using the same program from pre-K through,
We're using the same program pre-K to 5, which is
5.
Wonders, correct?
Okay.
So at least they have that.
you can check like curriculum-based measures where they're at with that sometimes too, so you know there's a continuum.
Yep.
I just have one more question too, is how are we, I know there's, science out there for incorporating reading through all of the subjects. And is that something that that teachers are conscious of and that they are being purposeful about to, like, there's science vocabulary, there's social studies vocabulary, and, that's
I think everyone
something that-
across the curriculum knows the importance of reading and doing that through multiple pieces of the curriculum. In English, in math, and science, and social studies, you saw one of the big issues we have in math is the ability to read the problem. So math teachers are doing a lot of work around reading problems. Science and social studies obviously do it as well. So it is very, very, very intentional what we're doing, because you can't just keep that in isolation in grade, in ELA. But looking at it from another angle, if you're struggling in ELA reading, you're going to struggle in science, you're going to struggle in social studies, you're going to struggle in math if you don't know how to read. And that's where the decoding program, that OG program, comes in.
All right, and then, to move into the SEL part of things, I'm working with the school psychologists around multi-tiered systems of support and what that looks like. And we are focusing on certainly the academics, behavior, but also on the SEL piece. And we'll start with a book study fairly soon, in a book that the school adjustment counselors, Sachs and myself, will choose to just kind of help meet the needs of students with and without disabilities across the district. And so I'll keep you informed of what that looks like as we move forward.
The book
Certainly
study for the
something to
teacher, for the staff?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Book study for the staff or?
Well, really, as a small group first, and then kind of a teach the teacher model, we'll roll it out for them, yeah. Okay, and then our program development. And this is just preliminary, just my first glance at the programs in the district. And I know we have our flex programs, and I have talked with everybody across the district, and program teachers, non-program teachers, administrators, and there's a lot of different definitions around what flex is, and it looks very different in each of our schools. So I think moving forward, we'd like to just kind of define what those different programs are, what their focus areas are, what they look like, and how they function. And we don't want to release the former intent of flex, which was to be flexible. We want to be flexible with our students, especially given we're such a small district and our populations ebb and flow and shift, and we want to be ready to do that. But this is just my first glance. At my first glance at our preschool, especially preschool and K, we need a developmental class. We have the room for it, all ready to go. We just need to find a teacher to teach the class next year, but we have a population of students that needs a different classroom environment. And some of these students may have intellectual impairment. It's a little early to be putting that category, with students that young, but they are definitely developmentally delayed, and they need a place to feel safe, to feel supported, and to have a teacher who knows how to meet the needs of that population. And so I do see that developing at the primary school. We definitely have a continuum of applied behavioral analysis, behavioral, and when I say behavioral, I do not mean like a social and emotional class. I mean a strict classroom ABA model that is intended for children typically on the autism spectrum. And we have a need for that at our elementary, at our middle, and at our high school. So I fully expect that will continue. And then we definitely have a growing SEL population. We are certainly seeing that at the middle school. We now have a sub-separate classroom, if you will, at our elementary school. It is small, but really needed. So I do see a cadre of students, grades 2 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12. We do have a continuum for SEL classroom needs and classroom environments. And then we were just talking about the language-based classroom, which is essentially that Orton-Gillingham environment that is multisensory reading across, domains, across subject areas. Some of the programs that we're looking for, models for each of the different classrooms, if you will, is developmentally appropriate practice at our preschool, applied behavioral analysis for ABA, restorative justice practice for our SEL programs, and then, of course, our Orton-Gillingham for the language. This is a big one. Sitting in my seat is support for inclusion practices and support for our building principals. And right now, we have adopted, really across our buildings, a co-teaching model that looks very different, not only building to building, but classroom to classroom. You are going to have teachers that are excellent at this, and you're going to have teachers that are not so good at it for a variety of reasons. Either they haven't had experience with it, they haven't been trained in it, they, see their classroom as their own domain. There's a variety of reasons why it might not be the best form of meeting the needs of students with disabilities. And we're taking a look at that, what it looks like in each building. And how can we make it better? And how can we help our teachers be all that they can be? And that's really us supporting the building principals to do that. And, of course, the instruction and the outcomes for students should drive everything, right? So we're doing a little analysis of how are our students doing in these inclusive settings, and is our co-teaching model working, essentially? And if not, what's the direction we're going to go? Okay. And then tiered systems of support, which I already really covered. And our last one is our community engagement. This is the fun part. Meeting with the CPAC, of course, in our event planning and our meetings. Meetings with parents, stakeholders, and staff. This is so I'm not competing with Dr. Vieira, Muffins with Merrick, coming soon, just a morning meeting to come, and I'll answer questions for you, trying to explain the direction that we're going in and where we are currently. Unified sports, so we do have some updates. We had a meeting earlier this week around unified sports, and we are going to move forward with implementing bocce in January, so we're very excited. We will have a parent meeting on December 7th at 6:30 p.m. to just kind of roll that out, because there is a parent component, especially for our middle. We have decided, our planning committee would really like to incorporate this also for our elementary and middle school students. So Mr. DeFonso and I are going to coach, and we're going to do that in the afternoons between 4 and 5 p.m., and the parents will have to drive their student there. There is a mission to this madness, and that we would like to have the parents stay and talk to each other and have a support group and hear what's going on and have a venue in which to talk to other parents of kids who have disabilities and who don't. Mm-hmm. And so we thought that would be a good venue in which to do that. Right? And we will have our Tiger Buddies assist. And, I just wanted to thank our staff at the elementary school especially, because certainly they've gone through a lot in the past couple of weeks with our 5th grade teacher resignation, and they really have stepped up to the plate. to make sure that the needs of the students are being met, to clean up some of the areas that needed to be cleaned up, and they really have done such a nice job in supporting each other and supporting our students. So I just want to do a little shout out that they were really working hard to make sure that that's happening. And the same at the middle school. So thank you.
Dr. Merritt, could you talk a little bit about that you have some people coming in to help our students with some transition planning, our older students?
Oh, sure. So we have Courtney Cormier. She is from, remind me of the...
Center for Living and Working, so
Thank you.
she's pre-employment transition services. So we have a lot of children that are going to leave the district, and they've had this supportive environment with all these people. So we're really working on transition planning.
Absolutely. And really having conversations around what's your plan for your student in the future. If you have a student with a disability and you're not sure as to whether they're going to meet graduation requirements or whether they're going to be with us until they're 22. And that's a big decision to make, and let's start having those conversations when your student is 14. And I can tell you as a parent of a child with a disability, and I was sharing this with the CPAC today, I never told my son that he had autism. I didn't tell him until the school told me that he had to come to a team meeting when he was 14, and I said, oh shoot, I probably should tell him that he's autistic. And so I had to tell him. I don't think he ever really fully grasped that until he went to try and get his associate's degree at community college, and then I had to have the real conversation, like, I don't know that you have this type of abstract thought, and we had a whole discussion about that. But that's a hard time. That's a very hard time to have those kind of conversations, and so we're here to help you get through that. And if we can help you in any way with paperwork for DDS, paperwork for your 688 referrals, paperwork for MRC, reaching out to outside providers to bring them into your team meeting for you and to make that cohesiveness and that transition planning easier, please. That's what we're here for, and we're happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just had one more question about the co-teaching and, inclusion, and you were saying that, you were going to take a look at how it's working and, assess that. So what does that look like when you, talk about, like, how often are you looking at that, and what kind of information are you gathering to assess?
No, that's a great question. So that's a lot of conversation with the building principals. And I would fully expect that they would have a strong handle on what their inclusion teachers are doing well and what they are reporting back as not going well. Based on our communication with the building principal, they will share with us what we need to do for them. If we need to come in and do some PD with a small cadre, let's say at the middle school, happy to do it. If we need to do some training at the elementary school, happy to do it. If you need us to come in and observe a classroom, happy to do it. But they will communicate that to us, because we do view, especially those inclusion teachers, that they're part of their umbrella, and we're there to support and help in any way that we can. So we'll wait and have those conversations with them about what needs to be done.
Are there regular, sessions like where you communicate and kind of check in with each other? Is there a regular process to that?
There is, I wouldn't call it a process per se, but yes, we have regular check-ins. So I meet with the middle school principal. I've met several times with the high school principal on this issue, and I meet, Anthony's my neighbor, and Mr. DeFonso is my neighbor, so we're always talking about these types of things. But yes, they will report back to me what their needs are, what they need for moving forward, and what they're seeing in the classroom.
And do you have department meetings, or the coordinators have department meetings?
They do. So they meet bi-weekly with all of the special education staff in each building. Yes, so they have standard meetings for each building.
I have a question. The high school, the STARS program, are we getting the kids back out into the community? Is there any updates on that?
Yes. So that's a plan that needs to be rolled out. And typically, the teacher in the classroom rolls out, or it says what the needs of the students are, and we roll out a plan together. Yes. So that is in the works.
Teresa, do you have any questions?
No, this time.
Thank you so much.
America. Right. And lastly is family and community engagement, just as a reminder. Beth turned me on to a program put on by DESE to help build community vision of how we can get parents more involved in schools last year. So John Bell worked with families last year. They put together a vision statement which reads, "The Douglas Public Schools, our families in the community, are partners in education. Our mission is to encourage the Douglas community through collaborative relationships that support all students in their academic and personal development." We developed 5 focus areas. So I just want to talk a little bit about the 5 focus areas and some things that we're doing this year, or going to be doing this year. In isolation, they look small, but when you add them all together over the course of the year, I'm hoping that we can gain some momentum and do some great things with our students in our community and families. Principals sent me an exhaustive list of what they're doing. Probably, if you look at that 12-page document, it's 100, 150 things in there. I'm only highlighting maybe 10 or 15 of them. So it might be geared more towards one building. It doesn't mean that another building's not doing. I just picked a few things. So the first thing is to create new opportunities for involvement that specifically work to engage families that aren't already connected. So I'm doing a coffee hour, both in the morning and in the afternoon, next Monday. I know Mr. DeFonzo's been running one. So far, no one has taken up on his offer for his coffee hour. Dr. Merrick is going to be doing muffins with Merrick. So just a way to have people come in off hours to sit, talk, meet, ask questions, and just get to know us. On Friday, I'm going to be launching a new website for family supports. One of the things that I noticed is we need to do a better job pushing out supports to families. So started working on this probably about 3-4 weeks ago, and I have about 15 different professional development opportunities for families spread out over the year. We're going to keep on adding to them. We're going to do a brief update with Care Solace. We have them coming in, and this is all going to be done virtually. We have the DA's office doing something on cyber safety for parents, how to keep them informed of what are good choices for kids to make, what are good websites. We have the Middlesex Partnership for Youth coming in and doing something on executive functioning for parents. That's a 2-part series, and we're doing something on grit and the importance of grit. And then some of the other ones now are escaping me, but we have about a half dozen other options for people. So that website will go off. I'll publish it in my newsletter. It will go on the main website. But just a way for parents to get involved. Maybe some parents who may not typically be involved in schools. Maybe someone might see something on cybersecurity and it might spark an interest, or grit, or executive function, or whatever. But even if we have a half dozen families come who wouldn't typically come, and we have 10 of those events, that's 60 people who are involved that may not have been involved. We look at Courtney to refresh my memory, but she's not going to be able to. I think Wednesday or Thursday last week, we had DMH come in and meet with all of our counseling department. Dr. Merrick also attended, and they gave us a pretty good overview of different services they can provide to families. So again, it's something that our staff has that they can now use as a resource to push out to families in need. Mr. DeFonzo started doing a couple weeks ago, come in with your kid and have lunch. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, but he's inviting families to come in and have lunch with their kids. He's had about a half dozen families come in and do it. And again, it's an opportunity for people who may not be able to come in before school, after school, to come in the middle of the day and have lunch with their kids, get the opportunity to meet Mr. DeFonzo on the way in, meet with some staff members. Cindy's doing mystery readers, which are inviting parents in, and Anthony's also doing good news calls of the day, where when teachers or someone sees a kid doing something good, he's calling home, and it could be any kid. So again, trying to find ways to connect with and engage with other families. We're going to increase family and community presence in our school, both during and outside the school day. We talked about the coffee hours. The kindergarten is looking at a fall STEAM event. Mrs. Sosha has community guest readers. I know who they are, but she told me I can't tell you. So she's inviting different people from the community. Some may be retired teachers across the district to come in and read to kids, and different people who are involved in the community. And then finally, career series at the high school to get people from careers to come in and meet with kids. Provide consistent and meaningful two-way communication with families about student progress. We just finished our parent-teacher conferences this week. I'm going to be sending out probably 3-4 weeks a survey to families to look, can we revamp our open house and our and our conference format?
Amen.
Okay?
Can we?
Now, if I can figure this out, I might be able to write a book and go on tour and make $1 million, because it's a conversation that's happened forever. The format for parent-teacher conferences works great in K-5 because you have 30 slots and you have 30 kids. At the high school, sadly, you don't have that involvement, so you have teachers who come here for 2.5 hours. Some might see 5 parents, some might see 1, some might see 30.
Some kids might not be able to see their teachers because they ran out of slots.
And then you get to the middle school, which is the issue, which is just, they meet as a team, there's 100 kids on a team, and there's 25 to 30 slots. So once they're filled up, they're filled up.
And if you didn't get the email in time.
So it's,
It's the vein of my existence.
so, and even our open house format, can we look at that differently? So I'm going to be sending something out to families to get input as to what could we do differently? Is there an idea that we haven't thought of? I'll reach out to staff and do the same thing, but that's coming in the next month or so. Ensure families have access to resources they need to support their children. And so we're looking at that website that provides a lot of resources. We're looking at different ways to include information in newsletters. If you see the newsletters that are coming up from principals, they have a little bit more information in them. We did a Title I informational night. And then we're looking at building a sense of community pride within the town of Douglas and the school system. So we do things on Student Spotlight, Alumni Spotlight. We have a different level of social media presence this year than we've seen in the past. I'm getting ready to, in another month, to create a brochure, basically a brag brochure, to send out to people about all the accomplishments that we have here. Mrs. Bennett down here at the high school, like, where am I? But it's down in the main entrance, is doing a giving tree. And she had kids write about what they're thankful for. So if you're feeling blue, if you're feeling gray, you can just get up there and say, wow, look at all these things. You always have one thing to be grateful for. And that helps build a sense of community. So those are just some of the things we're doing. Again, in isolation, small things. But when you build 10 one month, 10 another month, 10 another month, when you get 5 or 6 people in 1 week, another 5 or 6 people in another week, you start gaining some momentum. So excited about some of the ideas we have here, and excited about finding different ways to get community members and families involved and engaged in our schools.
I think that's great. I loved everything I heard, and like I am seeing more of a presence on social media than originally, and just like being able, as a parent, having eyes on what's happening and the engagement that our staff is having with our children is just really great, and it's all positive, and that's just been great to see. I would like to just kind of put something out there to make sure that we're initiating some of these things, particularly in the middle school. I think that's a little quieter, I
Yeah, we
think.
don't really have a social media
Yeah.
presence in the middle school.
So, and just, trying to do some of these family engagement things, maybe we can somehow get community or family guests in, whether maybe it's not reading, but maybe it's a career thing, or I don't know, something that,
Lunch, have you come in, I mean, I know middle schoolers
lunch.
don't like to
Yeah,
have,
no, they
but
don't
if
want
you
to.
do, like, like the Friday, you get your parents to come in and maybe they help serve the lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's certain things we have to do, but,
You felt
we
corny
can clean up, we can, I mean, some involvement at the middle school, I
Yeah.
think is warranted, because you hear all these other things that are going
Yep.
on.
I'll talk to Mr. O'Brien.
Helping the
A little
kids
honey
with the
to-do
garden out
list.
front or something. I know you like gardens, Courtney. That's why I was going with
Maybe
that.
we'll do that.
You know what I mean? Like make it nice.
Kids, yeah.
Yeah, I know, Raquel was always trying to do like her
Yeah.
table, seed to table or whatever, like trying to do some kind of like community garden or something.
Yeah.
And I do want to give, because when we walked in this afternoon, in the entryway for the high school, there's the big tree with all the
Giving
leaves.
tree, yeah.
That is, it's beautiful. I mean, that would be a nice little picture to put up on our website. It's like that type of stuff, there's talking about the staff, their get to know your staff. There's those pictures downstairs too as well. I mean, there's a lot of great things that we're doing. We're just only getting to see this school because it's the school where the school committees are held. But there's a lot of good things, like I went to the elementary school for Veterans Day. That was all decorated in the hall. They went all out. So, I mean, if we could just try to get the community to come in, like the great things that we are doing in the schools, we're back. We want to have the community back too as well.
100%. And that's it for me for tonight.
Thanks. Moving on to the school committee and subcommittee reports, the accounts payable report.
So, I don't know what one it is, but for full disclosure, I'm gonna ask Heather to report on these. We had to complete a corrective action. I did sign something that was a bill for my child, so I will not be doing that anymore. I did not know that. So just to be transparent for everybody, Heather will be doing the ones that have anything that I could possibly benefit from.
So going forward, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start this out. I will re-sign the batch. So I'm going to go through and approve, ask for a motion to approve warrant 15 for the school committee, number 23, and $296,031.49. Nothing was out of the ordinary.
I move to approve accounts payable warrant, 15, school committee 23.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Monique. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Awesome. Next one is the warrant 16 for school committee 2023. Warrant dates were October 13th, 2022, and October 14th, 2022, in the amount of $100,980.37. Nothing was out of the ordinary with this one either.
Right, I move to approve 16, school committee 23 on 1013 and 1014 for $100,980.37.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Second.
Second by Monique, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? Thank you. And the last one is warrant Douglas High School 23-01. Warrant date was October 13th in the amount of $1,145. And nothing out of the ordinary with this one either.
I move to approve warrant Douglas High School 23-01, 101322 for the amount of $1,145.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Second.
Second by Monique. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? Thank you. Now moving on to the consent agenda. We have our meeting minutes from October 19th, 2022 for us to review. If nobody has any issues with this, I'd be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the school committee meeting notes from October 19th, 2022.
Second.
Motion made by Beth, seconded by Teresa. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Yes. Moving on to the next is the Douglas Elementary School out-of-state music trip from Rhode Island Philharmonic.
So we have Dr. Moniz coming up. I know he's too humble to look at the title, but again, this is his first time, I think, coming here since he completed his dissertation last year. So just congratulations on that final step in your educational journey.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Another doctor in the house.
Too funny. All right. Last year, a similar field trip was approved. However, the venue switched to an online platform, so I'm trying it again. I'd like to take the 4th and 5th graders to all of them, so it's like 185 kids, to the Rhode Island Philharmonic Orchestra in Providence, Rhode Island. This is at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium. They host an event called Link Up, The Orchestra Rocks. And it goes over all the exciting ways how the orchestra music can rock. And it's not just a concert where they're sitting and watching, it's an interactive show. So the Rhode Island Philharmonic Music School will provide each kid with a recorder, a workbook. I have a PD session on Thursday. I'll have to fit all 185 recorders into my Corolla. We'll see what happens. And so they give us all this material for free at no cost to us. And they actually get to perform from their audience seats with the orchestra. We get to practice the songs in the classroom. We learn about all the elements of the orchestra. It's a fun time. And it's about an hour-long show. Takes probably about 30, 35 minutes to get there from here. And the only cost we would have to assume would be the busing. It's quoted at about $1,200. And I reached out to PTO. They declined to pay for a portion of it. I also tried to get a grant in September. However, that deadline for that transportation grant, according to that Google form I had to fill out, had passed. So I think if we were to send out permission slips, it would be like $7 or $8 per kid. So, any questions?
I think it's fantastic.
Very cool.
So I'd be looking for a recommendation.
So I move to approve the out-of-state field trip to the Rhode Island Philharmonic Link-Up Concert on May 23rd, 2023, located in Providence, Rhode Island.
Motion made by Beth, seconded by?
Second.
Second by Monique. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you.
The next one is the Douglas High School out-of-state music department field trip.
All right. Well, I'm here on Al's behalf. I'll be his proxy. The music department's going to be the high school that is going to be traveling to New York City on Tuesday, March 21st and Wednesday, March 22nd to participate in this Broadway classroom program. I believe this trip has been approved in 2017 and in 2019 as well, so this is sort of a redo of those trips. I'm not sure exactly which Broadway show. I think that's to be determined, but one of the professional Broadway performers will be doing a workshop for the kids before the show, so it kind of gives them a taste of what it's like to sort of live that Broadway performing lifestyle and how to be a Broadway performer before they get to see the show themselves. And I believe there's also a sightseeing opportunity. In the past, if I'm not mistaken, they've gone to the 9/11 Museum, they've seen the Statue of Liberty, St. Michael's Cathedral, places like that. The cost of the trip is $467. The music boosters, this is per student, the music boosters are going to contribute $50 to each student. I believe there are a couple grants that have been applied for and are pending. One of them is, he wrote it somewhere, a $500 transportation grant, and the other one is a $2,600 grant through the Massachusetts Culture Council. I think that's really it. Any questions? Comments, concerns?
No, it's a great program, so
Awesome.
no issues. No one has,
Hold on, one addendum here. We're also including the drama students as well. They're also invited, because the more students that attend, the lower the cost is.
Are they staying overnight, or are they
It
coming?
is an overnight trip, so it'll be Tuesday to Wednesday in New York.
It's an awesome opportunity for them.
It is.
yeah, it is. So if no one has any concerns, I'd be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the high school out-of-state music department trip to New York City on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, and Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023, to attend a Broadway musical performance and a workshop.
Motion made by Monique, seconded by
Teresa?
Teresa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thank you so much.
Wonderful,
Thank you so
thank
much for coming.
Have a good night.
Courtney just whispered to me, it's awesome to have kids back out after, I won't say it.
Absolutely.
I don't say it, but after what we experienced for 2.5 years, it's great having kids back out.
Return of normalcy.
The return to
Yes.
normal is awesome for
Yes.
It's more
kids.
fun to talk about this than that.
It
Yes.
is much more fun to talk
And
about
that
this
other word we
than,
won't mention here.
yeah.
And they will remember
symptomatic.
this. They may not remember that, They might remember this.
No, there's so much to that. That's awesome. And it's really, I mean, it's still a pretty good.
Moving on to the disposal
deal.
of obsolete furniture for the Douglas Public Schools cafeteria tables.
Yes, the primary school has 14 cafeteria tables that are over 25 years old, and they need to be disposed of due to the recent acquisition that we got from BVT. So we're looking for to dispose these.
Any discussion?
No.
Nope. Maybe you're looking for a motion?
I move to approve the disposal of 14 cafeteria tables from the primary school that are deemed to be of no value.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
I'll second.
Seconded by Beth. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thanks. Bless you. Next one is the School Business and Operations Manager Report, transfers and reclassifications.
Yep, I do have some transfers and reclassifications this evening. I usually do the transfers first, so I'll do those. The FY 2023 budgetary transfers number 3, and these are at the request of various administrators. I still haven't gotten to mine yet. It'll be 2 pages long. Any questions on those? So they're covering either POs that they were expecting to put in after the transfer was done, or negative balances that they had.
So be looking for a motion?
I move to approve the FY 2023 budgetary transfers number 3.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
I'll second.
Seconded by Beth. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Thanks.
Now for the reclassifications number 3, all for various reasons. So the first 3, we're moving one staff member from the preschool revolving fund over to the general fund because she does not work at the preschool anymore. So, and then primary school, we're moving, and then we're moving one of the staff members that we had in at the primary school, but in the general fund, to take up that spot to utilize the funds in the preschool account. That's the one down there. The next one down is we're waiting for approval for the ESSER 3 grant. We did an amendment, so we're moving one of the staff salaries, because you could use it for actually Title I staff, so that's what we did, we utilized it for that, moving that into ESSER 3. The next one down is for the custodians. There has been a lot of confusion because of moving people around, and in the summertime, they're all over the place. So we did make a move, so this particular custodian, we're moving from the middle school over to the primary. He's actually taking that spot, so he's half grounds and then primary, rather than the middle school, which is what the person he replaced was doing. So again, we've just, a lot of moving pieces because of just shortages and things of that nature, so. And then the next one down is, as you're aware, we have now psychologists, we have serving the either grades, say K through 5, and then 6 through 12. So I have to, per DESE, I have to actually divide them out. So I had to divide out their salaries, so I've got them 0.5 in each one, so we had to do a reclass for that. The next one down is to reclass from general fund to Title I. And the next one down is utilizing the rest of the, moving from FY21 teacher quality grant to FY22 teacher quality grant. And the next one down is the same thing as the, the movement of the psychologist. Moving Carolyn Thompson from, it was in just district-wide, so now I'm actually moving it in between those 2 schools, 0.5 in each one. So actually, yeah, Cynthia Tuttle wasn't that one there, I was saying that. That was moving from teacher, general fund to Title I grant. I'm sorry, I said psychologist. So that's what all those are, some cleaning up. So to get them where they belong for various reasons. Does anyone have any questions? Nothing simple these days.
No one has any questions? Be looking for a motion?
I move to approve the FY 2023 reclassifications number 3.
Second.
Motion made by Monique, seconded by Teresa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any topics not anticipated that we need to discuss further? So I wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back on December 7th for our next school committee meeting. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Motion
I
to
need a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn at 8:21.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Beth, seconded by
Teresa.
Teresa. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thanks.
And don't forget about the subcommittee.